In today's lesson, I'm going to be teaching you how to hit a draw with your iron clubs. So setup, hugely important. I can't stress enough how important setup is when we're looking to draw the iron shots. This setup, whilst it may look fairly orthodox, is going to make it incredibly difficult for me to draw the golf ball. Why? Well, I've got the golf ball too far forward and my hips are too far back. This golf club moves around your body on an arc, as you can see here. Where we hit that ball on the arc is hugely important. So have a look at the golf club in my hand. If I hit the golf ball at this part of the swing, my golf club is traveling downwards and also out to the right. If I was to hit the golf ball at this part of the swing, the golf club is traveling upwards and left. Same swing, I'm just hitting the golf ball at different points. So how do we start if you want to hit a draw? Well, the first thing you have to do is move the ball a little bit further back. So for me with a 7-iron, that would be getting very close to middle of my stance, because normally I would have it slightly forward. So a little bit back in the stance with the ball position, hugely important. It means we hit the ball slightly earlier in the swing. The club head has therefore got a greater chance of being, or moving I should say, out to the right of the target. That's our first point. The second thing would be just to make sure that we've got the weight favouring that lead side with what we do with our hips. Notice how my head isn't really moving, but I'm trying to just put a little bit more pressure through that lead foot, and I feel that there maybe 55%, maybe 60%, but nothing more than that. So those two things really helpful. The final thing is making sure that we've got the club shaft length slightly towards the target, as you can see there. So 3 things in setup: ball slightly further back, weight slightly further forward, handle slightly ahead of the golf ball. Those 3 things, I can't stress enough how important they are to help you draw the irons. Point number 2 ties in with point number 1 quite nicely. What we've said is that if we can hit the ball earlier in the swing, the club head is more likely to be travelling out to the right of the target. We have to have the club path moving in to out if we want to hit a draw. So we've got our setup, but watch what happens if I made an extreme movement. This is not necessarily what we want to do, but if I got up to the top and I shifted my whole body like this, relative to me, the golf ball would be hit earlier. There's me, the golf ball's being hit earlier. If I was to back up, relative to me, the golf ball is being hit later. Lots of things that we do in this video are really influencing when we strike the ball on the arc. If you're someone who swings out to in, there is a part of your golf swing where the club is travelling in to out. You're just not hitting the ball at that part of the swing. You're almost leaving it too late until the golf club is moving out to win. So this second point is really just to make sure that from that good setup, once you've made your backswing, you're being really aware of your hips and moving them significantly towards the target in transition. As I make this little rehearsal here, I'm almost feeling the weight a little bit more to the outside of my lead foot. That's fine, I'm sort of rehearsing this here, so it doesn't matter if I slightly over-exaggerate it. It's always a good thing in practice to slightly exaggerate the movements. But again, the more I can move my hips towards the target, the more I can have my handle forwards, and the earlier I strike the golf ball in that big circle that we swing the club on. So what I'd have you do once you're in that setup is just practicing from the top, really pushing your hips as far forward as you can. You can see there how my hip is outside of my foot. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to get there in the swing, but in rehearsals, I really want to try and feel that. This is so important. There's a reason why it's important that we haven't covered, but we're going to cover that in the next little tip. But you need to make sure that you're adding lots and lots and lots of lateral movement in that down. Point number 3. Again, we're talking about club path, and this really ties into point number 2, and hopefully you can see how all these points sort of follow on from each other. We said that whilst the hips are moving forwards, that helps, and we said that there's another really key point to that. You can see I've got this alignment stick on the floor which is representing my target line. I've also got another golf club here which is angled slightly inwards. At delivery, so when my golf club reaches level with the ground, I pretty much need my golf club, my club shaft, angled slightly inwards from my target line. So closer to the golf club rather than the alignment stick. Watch what happens if I get to the top of my golf swing and I rotate aggressively. Really hard for me to get those two to marry up. From that face on, whilst we are adding in this huge lateral movement that we've discussed, it gives me the time and the opportunity to move the golf club down so that it matches the golf club that's on the ground. So we can really add points number 2 and points number 3 together. In rehearsal, again, I would have you up to the top, huge lateral shift, match the golf club to the one that's on the ground. We've got those two really key elements here that I've shifted forwards, and I've got my golf club into really good delivery position. These two movements, along with that setup, would almost from here guarantee that the club head is going to be moving out to the right of your target. That's the club path. That has to be in there. We can't hit a draw if the club path is out to in. We can't even hit a draw if it's neutral. We have to have it moving in to out. Those two movements are going to help you do that. Now, those alone don't give you a draw. You have to control the club face. We have to have the club face slightly closed to the direction that you're swinging. That's how we draw the golf ball. That's the ingredients that are present in every single draw. So we've got the club path sorted with our movements. How do we control the club face? We've got two options. And I'm not going to suggest to you which is best for you. I'm going to give you those two options. Head to the range, try them, see which gives you the most success. Option number 1 is very simply to do everything that we've discussed so far, and then through the impact area, simply try to close the face. It's that simple. Put the club out in front of you, how hard would it be just to close the face? It's not that difficult. So most of us should have the ability to control the club face, open it, close it a lot. We've got that ability. So some golfers will simply hit a draw by moving the path out to the right and then just releasing the toe of the golf club a little bit earlier or a little bit more over the heel to get the golf ball to come back. It's kind of done through feel. Takes a bit of practice and it needs to develop a bit of skill, but lots of golfers will draw the golf ball by doing that. So all I'm going to do on this one is I'm just going to rotate the club face a little bit more, get the ball to draw back. Pretty good. Slightly overdrew it, but the shape was what I wanted. All the ingredients were there. I probably just needed a little bit less of that club face rotation. So if you don't feel that you're maybe quite skilled enough to do that, you can actually just close the face a little bit at address. So what you would do is you would just take your normal grip on the golf club, but before you do that, you just turn the face slightly in. Now, it's only a few degrees. It really doesn't need to be a huge amount, but I can easily see now that with my normal grip, the club face is a little bit closed. Now, when I swing the club out to the right of the target through what we've discussed, the club face is already in that position. So I'm presetting it, I don't have to worry about it. Both will work. Both will create the recipe that we need, which is a club path out to the right, club face slightly closed to it, the ball will draw. There's just different ways of doing it. So let's try that one. Club face looks certainly a little bit closed at address. Let's now just worry about swinging the club out to the right. And a very, very similar result. That's actually finished a little bit more on my target, but a lovely right to left shot shape.